What's the most important teacher quality of all? Is it to be gorgeous and good looking? Is it to be bald and old like me? What do you think? According to the research, it is empathy, putting ourselves in the shoes and minds of our students. And we have all kinds of empathy. What we have best of all, I think, is linguistic empathy, especially at lower levels. When you look at talks on empathy, you get the type of advice you see there. Listen actively, withhold judgment. There's loads and loads of research and material available now to practice empathy, but rarely do we talk about linguistic empathy. And that's what we have, and it's our greatest asset in many, many ways. It makes you into a super teacher because you know what the students are thinking. This is the attitude I think we need for teaching. I can help you learn more quickly because I'm Latino too. Not in my case, but at least I've studied and learned the languages my students speak. I had exactly the same problems you're having. You're an ideal model for your students. And if you tailor your linguistic empathy not only into yourself and your teaching, but also into the materials and syllabuses that you're using, I believe your students will benefit enormously. And I have to ask this question, are Latino students being held back for the wrong reasons? Interesting question. Many publishers produce country-specific or region-specific materials which incorporate the first language to some extent. If you go to Poland, there are all sorts of books for Polish students, 40 million students. If you go to Greece, I think it's about 18 million Greeks. All the books, there's loads and loads of books which are Greek-specific. What about Latin America? What you get perhaps more and more these days is what I call add-ons. You get this sort of extra book to help the students, but they're not a starting point. The syllabuses are not adapted. It's still the same international method which is being exported as a global product rather than a specific product. So people are trying to shape things more, which is great. But the extras, the specifics for our students tend to be in the resource books or in the teachers' books. Now, do you have access to resource books? Do you have time to use teachers' books? Most teachers in Latin America, to my experience, are too busy rushing through the traffic from one job to another. And they don't have much time to prepare at all. And then they never get through the course book or the material. So adding on all the extras seems just to fall by the wayside. It should be the core of what we're doing rather than just an add-on. My belief is that 700 million Latinos deserve much better than much of the current diet which we're giving them. So again, I'm not trying to offend anybody or say anything negative. I'm just talking as a frustrated 67-year-old teacher. I'm trying to give back what I've learned by watching class after class after class. Let's see, and then let's look at grammar now. We've done pronunciation, we've done vocabulary, we're moving towards the end. You'll be pleased to hear. What's the best way to reduce translation errors? In my experience, it is to anticipate them. If you look at those mistakes, I can see the pain on your faces. I have 18 years, or I have my dog since 3 years. What I love to do is just put the errors up on the screen if you're teaching online, on the board at the beginning of the class. You can elicit the correction if the students know already, but the problem with eliciting the correction is it's always the same students who give you the answer. It's the Wikipedias. I know, every class has a Wikipedia, and it tends to be frustrating for the other students. If you put it on the board and say nothing at the beginning of the class, just show the mistakes, what's going to happen if you translate. The students don't need to speak a word of Spanish. They can work it out for themselves. And again, with multilingual classes, you can't do this because you can't anticipate the mistakes. You have to wait until they've made the mistakes and then start to correct them. But in our case, we can be much more proactive, and it speeds things up really well. It's a great pedagogical shortcut. Here's another example. If you just put that on the board and then correct it, home is the nicest place in the world, okay? And then you can ask contrast questions. Is the word all of the same or different? How many words in English? How many words in Spanish, for example? How is the punctuation the same, etc.? Or is the meaning the same? Is the use the same? Is it similar or different? You can simply look at that framed. Of course, the students have mentally translated. They don't need to verbally translate. But by beginning with the issues which come from the inevitable, then you can speed things up enormously. It's much faster than sort of read through a long text. and answer the questions. The typical inductive presentation. Now, read the text again. Again, teacher, really, teacher? Yes, please read the text again, and we're going to analyze the vocabulary. Okay, teacher, so they read it again, and they're beginning to hate the text. And then you say, now, I want you to read it a third time. Oh, teacher, no, anything but that. Please, 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 could you read it a third time? And now we're going to extract the grammar, which is exactly the same in Portuguese or Spanish. What's the point of taking such a long time, this huge inductive process, denying the inevitable? The students translated the grammar the first time they saw it. So rather than wait till the third time, it seems to me we can accelerate that process enormously. I'm really going off these long inductive presentations. Okay. It gives you a clear, efficient model and much more time for practice. And the most important thing which can happen in a class in many, many ways is practice. Our students need more practice. Again, my experience of observing classes from Chile up to Mexico is that there isn't enough practice. There's lots and lots of explanation, lots and lots of exercises, but just fast, intensive practice is the best way to sort of get rid of errors and to deliver fluency and joy to a classroom. It's also a great way to flip too. If you just sort of ask the students to do the translation outside class, they could do it for themselves. You could give it to them like this, but asking students to translate examples or just look at examples, mistranslated, corrected, however you choose to do it, is a really good starting point for a flipping approach. So the method I would suggest is getting students to compare mentally. They don't need to verbalize Spanish. Notice any similarities and celebrate because it's similar. It's near to what I know. Hallelujah. Focus on any differences and then practice as much as you possibly can in English. And that's sort of, it's not a method, it's not a technique. It's simply, that's how I've been teaching for the last 30 years with monolingual groups. And it tends to help students get the idea more quickly. Here perhaps are a list of advantages of that sort of thing. And I often do this, just before I move on, I often do this when you've got a phrase, a sentence, a block of language in focus, just say, okay, quickly look at it, translate it. Whisper your translation to your friend if you need to, confirm together if you need to, but it can be silent, it can be mental. Just look, think, compare, count, notice, celebrate. Ooh, notice the problem. Okay, got the message? Now let's continue. Just giving them that process because it's going to happen anyway. They're looking for equivalence all the time. And that sort of pause, take a moment, have a little think, maybe compare if you wish, maybe whisper. So don't shout out translations. We don't want that. But I encourage my students to whisper together. Then that way you're bringing in the mother tongue. It's there anyway. You can't switch it off. Using it wisely, using it efficiently, and then making more space for practice time. The advantages of that, I'll give you a list here. There are many, many advantages of modeling the traps without using Spanish. It can accelerate comprehension. I'll just let you read this whilst I have a drink. Translation is often described as the best way to notice. To me, the most important critical thinking skill, I mean, again, it's one of the great 21st century skills, but to me, perhaps the most important critical thinking is actually critically thinking between your first language and your target language. Excuse me, it develops metalinguistic awareness, but also it's very satisfying when you find it simple. And it clarifies very quickly when you find it's different. And then I wanted to include him because poor Mario had just recently died. He was my guru and he taught so many of us so many wonderful techniques. He said quite clearly, English grammar can be better understood by looking into the mother tongue grammar mirror. When do the students say, teacher, I understand. Ahora sí. When do they say that? When do they say that? Normally you can explain and explain and explain. It's, Okay, teacher. Okay, it's normally when they've actually compared with the equivalent or found the equivalent or simply translated into their own language. And once they've done that ping pong process, they're happy again. And as Scott Thornberry says, the skill of translation is integral to being a proficient L2 user and contributes to overall plurilingualism. So it's utterly valid to practice translation, perhaps not so much in class, perhaps more outside class, but nevertheless, using mental translation, I think, is a great way forward. And obviously, the opposite is true too. If by denying contrast, it can frustrate, it can confuse, it can mislead, it's very negative, it can delay and it can decelerate learning. So it's often good to look at what if you don't do it, then you cause a lot of problems. The oldest activity in the book, just giving students parallel texts and then asking them questions to find the answers. Great technique, but it's very rarely in our materials because they're so international. Compare examples. How do you say el café se hace con los granos, for example? They say it's made from the beans, etc., etc. So give them 6 phrases, they look for them. How do you say them? Via Spanish. They're speaking English, not Spanish. Spanish is written but not spoken. How does the form of the passive differ from Spanish? And immediately the students are able to start talking about language. It's incredibly efficient. It's very quick. And the room for doubt, I think, is greatly reduced. I asked you at the beginning to think of 2 items of clothing. Have you got lots now? I've got 13. I wonder how many you've got. There they are. Those are my 13. Perhaps you found more. You've probably got a better range of clothes than me. Okay. And then there are 20 I've got which don't have the same mother tongue. And if you're a Portuguese speaker, obviously it's actually the same numbers. You've got a different spelling for chaqueta and sapatos, but it comes out more or less the same. So it's not 50-50 cognates, but you've got quite a lot more cognates than perhaps you thought. What's interesting about this is when the students are doing this activity, blouse, pants, etc. What they're doing is ping-ponging in their head. They're drilling themselves. It's a great activity, asking students to open the fridge and find 10 items which have the same first letter in English or parts of the body. Which ones? Any lexical set which you introduce, ask students simply to sort of try and find some kind of connection, something similar between the two. All they're doing then is drilling themselves. Great activity before a test, for example, and students love it. And it doesn't cost a penny, and it doesn't require any preparation. And remarkably, your salary remains the same. Here are some questions for any lexical set. A lot of our textbooks have picture dictionary pages which introduce 10, 12 words via pictures. Then ask the students just to process them. Looking at the pictures, cover the words. Which words have the same first letters, same prefix, suffix, etc. in English and in our language? The spelling, how many letters are the same, which are nearly the same, which are different, which are more different, which are less different, which have the same word stress, same number of syllables, which perhaps sound like or make you think of a word, an expression, a sentence, a phrase in our language. And then more extensive, if you're extending this, can you find other words which rhyme with those, other words with this spelling? Is the etymology similar? And all of these questions you can ask in English about words which the students see in English, and they're mentally ping-ponging between Spanish and English. And I insist you answer in English. So keep saying the English word. Don't say the word in Spanish or in Portuguese. So it's a form of drill, but it's a really interesting form of drill because you're looking for connections, looking for hooks, ways to help students feel progress more quickly. And if you're working with tenses or phrases, again, the same thing. Any tense, any phrase or expression, is it used, formed, or ordered similarly in our language? Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't, but that processing will help the students remember. And I think, again, it's a form of critical thinking, but it advances learning more quickly. And these are great elicitation prompts. When you're introducing something the first time, look at this word. Ask these questions. How many of the first letters, how many letters are the same? The first 2? Is the stress in the same place? Just asking students constantly to make that contrast. You can conduct the class entirely in English, but what you're doing is taking them back to base. in an interesting and productive way. It's extra processing, it's improved noticing. That's quite a nice little phrase, isn't it? Extra processing leads to improved noticing. To summarize that section, encourage any potentially helpful links to L1. It's intensive, and here are all the reasons. There are so many advantages. And I like that expression. It enriches their learning diet. And it makes them see you as a very good teacher because you've thought it through from different angles from most of the materials that we've been using. And the best thing of all is you don't have to speak Spanish to use Spanish. You don't have to speak Portuguese to use Portuguese. All you're doing is building connections and making the students ping pong between the languages as they naturally do anyway. I'll finish there. And now we're going on to questions. I've put on the screen, it's very small, I apologize, but I've tried to put the 12 key points from this session on the screen just to prompt some questions. And I'll stop there. You can go through that, read that through, and if you'd like to ask any questions, hopefully that will trigger a few questions. Many thanks for all that you've had to put up with from me. I do hope it's useful. I do hope it chimes bells. I hope it's what many of you are doing. And I do hope you can see the advantages of not holding back our students, but actually helping them to accelerate towards L1-based second language learning for our Latino students. Thank you.